Lagos was buzzing like a beehive. It was December, and the holiday spirit was spreading through the city like glitter on a Christmas card. Bright lights, red and green decorations, and glowing plastic Santas popped up in shops and doorways everywhere you looked. Even the warm evening breeze felt festive, carrying the smell of roasted corn and suya along the busy streets. In one corner of the city, the older houses in Adewale huddled close, looking like they were whispering secrets to each other. This was the trenches, as some people called it. Narrow roads, puddles in the dirt, and music blaring from small shops all day. Children chased each other between clotheslines and tiny market stalls, while friendly neighbors sold everything from dried fish to Christmas trinkets. Yet despite the cramped lanes and the shaky wooden balconies, there was still laughter in the air. People in Adewale always found a reason to smile, especially around Christmas time. Just a few miles away, the bright skyscrapers of Victoria Island shone against the skyline. Huge billboards showed models wearing flashy outfits, and fancy cars zipped through smooth roads. Big shopping malls offered ice cream, electronics, and shining ornaments that sparkled under polished lights. Wealthy visitors walked around with shopping bags, and tall hotels prepared Christmas buffets for guests from all over the world. Here, the holiday felt extra sparkly, as if each glass window was reflecting a piece of the sun. Teo Johnson, a young journalist fresh out of college, stood right at the edge of both worlds. She loved Lagos with all her heart, both the trenches and the bright modern spots. Teo lived in a small flat near Surulere, a neighborhood that balanced the old and new. She could hop on a bus and experience the cheerful chaos of the local markets one minute, then visit sleek cafes and art galleries the next. This made her feel like she was part of everything Lagos had to offer. Teo worked for a local newspaper called the Daily New Star. She was 23 years old and full of excitement for her first big assignment. Her editor, a grumpy man named Mr. Balagan, had told her that she would cover the upcoming Christmas dance festival, sponsored by a wealthy man called Chief Sunday Adewale. It was a huge event taking place near the lagoon, and it promised boat rides, fireworks, and a grand dance performance by a famous troupe led by the talented Mary Okeke. Everyone in Lagos was talking about it, and Teo couldn't wait to write something special. One morning, Teo arrived at the newspaper office to pick up her press badge. Mr. Balagan barely looked up from his desk. "Teo, you better bring me a good story," he said in a stern voice. "This festival is going to be the biggest thing this Christmas. Don't mess it up." Teo smiled, full of confidence. "Yes, sir. I'll do my best." She hurried out the door with her notepad and phone in hand. Her plan was to interview Chief Sunday Adewale at his fancy house in Ikoyi that afternoon. On the way, she decided to take a short stop by the lagoon near the marina. She wanted to see the Christmas decorations being set up. When she arrived, she saw tall poles where bright lights and banners would soon hang. Workers were pushing large crates labeled "Festival Supplies." But something felt off. She noticed a small group of people whispering nearby. An older woman wearing a colorful headscarf was shaking her head and mumbling, "I heard one boat vanished last night. They say something strange is happening on the water." Teo's ears perked up. A missing boat. This was unusual. She took a few steps closer, trying to catch more details. But before she could ask them anything, the group walked away, as if afraid to speak. Teo frowned. Missing boat. Could this be connected to the festival? She decided to keep an open mind. A few hours later, Teo rang the doorbell of Chief Sunday Adewale's large mansion. It was surrounded by a tall white fence and guarded by two polite security men. A cheerful housekeeper led her inside, where Christmas lights sparkled along the staircase, and shiny gold decorations hung from the ceilings. Chief Sunday Adewale appeared with a big smile, wearing a bright red hat that made him look like he was already in the holiday spirit. "Ah, Teo Johnson, the reporter. Welcome, my dear." He had a warm voice that filled the room. "Please come and sit. Would you like some soda or juice?" Teo felt comfortable right away. "Juice would be nice, sir. Thank you." She took out her notepad and pen. "It's an honor to meet you, Chief. The whole city is excited about the Christmas dance festival you're hosting. Chief Adewale grinned. Yes. Gonna be marvelous. We have fireworks, we have lights on the lagoon, and we have Mary Okeke's dance troupe as the main attraction. His face lit up when he mentioned Mary, who was known for her graceful moves and winning smile. She and her dancers will perform on a big floating stage. Can you imagine? A stage built on the water itself. It will be magical. Teo asked a few questions about the festival schedule, the sponsors, and expected guests. Chief Adewale's answers were cheerful and direct. But then Teo remembered the whispers she'd heard at the marina. Sir, she asked gently, have you heard anything about a missing boat on the lagoon recently? Some people said a small cargo boat disappeared last night. The chief's expression flickered for a moment. He forced a small laugh. Teo, you know how rumors fly in Lagos. People love telling wild stories, especially near Christmas. Maybe the boat engine broke, or it drifted off. I'm sure it's nothing serious. He waved it off as if it were a pesky fly. Teo nodded, though she felt something was strange. Still, she thanked him, took a few more notes, and said goodbye. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. Lagos traffic was heavy, and Teo decided to take a boat taxi across the lagoon to get home faster. She hopped onto a local boat, paying the friendly driver who welcomed her with a bright grin. She sat near the front, enjoying the cool breeze on the water. Soft waves lapped against the boat's side, and across the lagoon, she could see the city lights forming a colorful glow in the early evening sky. She overheard two passengers in the back whispering. My cousin said a dance group was supposed to practice on the lagoon last night. One said, voice trembling. He saw a strange light like green lightning flashing in the distance. That's nonsense, the other passenger replied, although he sounded unsure. Maybe it was just fireworks testing. Nothing to worry about. Teo felt her heartbeat quicken. A missing boat, a suspicious strange light, and a rumored practice session for Mary Okeke's dance troupe. Something wasn't adding up. She stared out at the water. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of green light in the distance, but it could have been a reflection from a passing ship. By the time Teo reached her stop, the sky was completely dark. Street vendors were lighting kerosene lamps, and Christmas lights blinked on trees by the water. She made her way toward her small flat, still thinking about the odd rumors. As she turned a corner, she almost bumped into a tall figure wearing a brown coat. It was Inspector Mike Adewale, a well-known police officer in Lagos. Teo recognized him from a recent news feature where he helped solve a robbery case. Inspector Mike knew Teo by sight. Ms. Johnson, fancy seeing you here. Working on something big, I bet. He raised an eyebrow. He looked a bit serious, but he had a kind face. Yes, sir, Teo replied. I'm writing about the Christmas dance festival. I also heard some stories about a missing boat. The inspector's eyes flickered with concern. I've heard a bit about that too. But let's not jump to conclusions, Teo. Sometimes folks exaggerate. Lagos is full of tales. Teo pressed her lips together. She could see he was being cautious. Right, I understand, she said with a polite smile. But if you learn anything, let me know. It might be important. Inspector Mike nodded, then walked away, blending into the crowd. As Teo watched him go, her phone buzzed. It was a message from the newspaper's office. Mary Okeke and her dance troupe not reachable. Tried calling. Zero response. Find out details. Teo's heart dropped. Mary Okeke was the star performer for the festival. Why would she go missing now? Teo checked the time, 8 p.m. Could it be related to the missing boat? She whispered to herself, anxiety building in her chest. She needed answers. She rushed up the stairs to her flat, locked the door, and paced around her small living room, reading the text message again and again. The gentle hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. She glanced at her notes. Missing boat. Strange lights. Mary's troupe out of contact. A chill ran up her spine, even though the night was warm. Gathering her courage, Teo reached for her phone to call the one person who might know more about the lagoon's secrets, a local fisherman named John Okone. He often worked at night and claimed to see things that most people never see. Teo had interviewed him once for a travel article on fishing in Lagos. Though he could be a little dramatic, he was kind and open to sharing stories. She dialed his number, but no answer came. The phone rang and rang until her call went to voicemail. Then, just as she was about to hang up, the line clicked. A shaky voice whispered, I saw something on the water, Teo. Be careful. It's not normal. Teo froze. John, are you there? Hello. The line went dead. For a moment, all Teo could hear was the pounding of her heart. Outside, a faint cheer rose from a group of children singing Christmas carols. But Teo felt no comfort from the carol's sweet melody. Instead, fear and curiosity tangled in her mind. What was really happening out on the lagoon? Whatever it was, Teo could sense it was big. Something bigger than anyone expected. And it was only the beginning. Teo Johnson woke up the next morning with worry lines on her forehead. She had barely slept after that eerie phone call from John Okone, the local fisherman who spoke about something not normal on the lagoon. Now, the sun peeked through her curtains, lighting up her small Surulere apartment. It was a new day, but Teo already felt like she was running late. Her phone buzzed with messages. Some were from her editor, Mr. Balogun, demanding updates. Others were from curious friends. Hey Teo, is it true Mary Okeke's missing? What's happening with the festival? Did you see those weird lights on the water last night? Teo felt a twist in her stomach. She got dressed quickly. A simple t-shirt, jeans and comfortable sneakers. In the background, the TV news was on low volume. A reporter stood near the lagoon front, mentioning rumors of missing boats and an upcoming Christmas dance festival still scheduled for the weekend. No one seemed to have any firm answers, and the police had not given an official statement. Teo's phone rang. She saw the caller ID, Inspector Mike Adewale. He picked up. Hello, Inspector. Good morning, Teo, he said, sounding as serious as usual. I heard from Mr. Balogun that you're digging into these missing boat stories. Could you come down to the station so we can compare notes? Teo felt a wave of relief. Sure, Inspector. I'll be there as soon as I can. Maybe this would help clear the confusion. She hopped onto a bus heading toward Ikeja, where the main police station stood. Traffic was rough, but Teo tried to distract herself by texting a few contacts. She noticed comedic graffiti on the side of the road that read, Lagos traffic. Our everyday exercise. It made her chuckle a bit. Even in tense times, people in Lagos knew how to joke about life's problems. When Teo arrived at the station, Inspector Mike was waiting by the front desk. He guided her into a small office, where an overhead fan spun slowly, doing little to cool the room. Have a seat, Teo, he said, gesturing at a wooden chair. Thanks, Inspector. She settled down, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. Word around town is that at least 2 boats have vanished in the past week. One cargo boat, and now possibly Mary Okeke's dance troupe's boat. Inspector Mike rubbed his chin, frowning. We got a report from the festival staff that Mary's group was supposed to rehearse on the lagoon late last night. They haven't returned, and no one can reach them. Teo's eyes widened. So Mary is really missing, she whispered. She'd secretly hoped it was just a false alarm, that Mary had switched off her phone or gone to a last-minute practice session somewhere else. It looks that way, Inspector Mike said quietly. And we have no leads yet. My officers are doing what they can, but everyone's busy with holiday crowd control. To make things trickier, some folks claim they saw strange lights on the lagoon. Others say it's just fireworks testing. Teo leaned in. Inspector, last night I got a call from John Okone. He said something strange was on the water, right before the phone cut off. John Okone, Inspector Mike tapped on a notepad. We tried to contact him too, but no luck so far. If you manage to reach him again, let me know right away. I will, Teo promised. What about Chief Sunday Adeniyi? He's organizing the festival. Has he said anything? Inspector Mike shook his head. Chief Adewale insists there's no problem. He's urging us not to frighten the public. He wants the festival to run smoothly. But I have a feeling there's more going on. Teo nodded, gathering her courage. Inspector, I want to help. I know I'm just a journalist, but I've been hearing rumors everywhere. I can talk to people who might not trust the police. Inspector Mike studied her face, then sighed. All right, Teo. But be careful and share what you learn. They exchanged phone numbers. Then Teo headed out of the station with a new sense of purpose. Her first stop would be the waterfront by Lagos Marina, where the festival stage was being built. If anyone had seen Mary or her dancers the previous night, they might be there. Later that afternoon, Teo arrived at the marina. The place looked both cheerful and tense at the same time. Workers in orange vests were setting up huge speakers and a raised platform near the water. Colored banners flapped in the breeze. The bright cityscape of Victoria Island gleamed behind them, skyscrapers catching the sunlight. But there was an undercurrent of worry. Teo noticed people whispering more than chatting. She spotted a tall, lanky man carrying a stack of folded chairs. He looked friendly enough, so she approached him. "Excuse me, sir. I'm Teo Johnson from the Daily News Star. I'm writing about the festival. Have you heard anything about the missing dance troupe?" The man put down the chairs carefully and frowned. "Missing? I did see some dancers around here last night. It was late, close to midnight. They were supposed to do a dress rehearsal on a boat anchored further out. I helped them load a few costumes." He scratched his head. "I remember Mary Okeke, she looked excited. But then they all got on this small boat and left. I haven't seen them since." Teo scribbled notes. "Did you notice anything strange?" The man glanced at the water. The lagoon felt odd, like there was a weird mist. And I remember hearing a noise, kind of a low rumble like thunder. But the sky was clear. Goosebumps prickled on Teo's arms. "Thank you," she said, handing him a small card with her name. "If you remember anything else, please call me." As the man walked off, Teo stood by the edge of the lagoon, staring at the gentle waves. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining Mary and her dancers boarding a boat under the moonlight. Where could they have gone? Suddenly, someone touched her shoulder. She yelped, jumping nearly 2 feet in the air. She whirled around and found herself face to face with Chief Sunday Adewale. He was wearing a sharp white agbada, looking regal yet worried. "Teo," he exclaimed, lifting his hands apologetically. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." She took a calming breath. "It's okay, Chief. You just startled me." Chief Adewale smiled gently, but worry creased his eyes. "I want you to know we're doing everything we can to find Mary and her troupe. The festival can't happen without them." He sighed, running a hand over his chin. "I've hired extra security, and I've told the police everything I know. We have to keep the Christmas spirit alive, you understand." Teo nodded, noticing a hint of desperation in his voice. "Chief, do you have any idea who or what might be behind these disappearances?" "No," the chief's voice cracked ever so slightly. "Some people say it's pirates. Others think it's just an accident. But we can't jump to conclusions. We must stay calm." She studied his face. Was he hiding something or just genuinely worried? It was hard to tell. "Chief, if you hear any strange rumors, please let me know." "I'm trying to find the truth," she said softly. He gave a brief nod and sighed again. "Thank you, Teo. Let's hope we find them soon." Late that evening, Teo decided to do a bit more unofficial investigating. She took a taxi to a small dock in Ibute Meta, a less glitzy part of Lagos, but still close enough to the water. Once again, she hoped to find John Okone or someone who knew him. The dock was dimly lit, with a single flickering bulb hanging over a wooden pier. She walked up to a young boy selling roasted plantains by a makeshift stall. "Hello," Teo greeted. "Have you seen a fisherman named John Okone around here?" The boy shrugged. "I saw him last night, Auntie." He took his boat out when the moon was high. Didn't come back. Some people said he was chasing after a strange light on the lagoon. He paused, chewing on a piece of plantain. They say the light looked green and danced over the water. Scared some folks. Teo handed the boy some money for a piece of plantain. Her pulse was racing. A green light dancing on the water. Could that be connected to the vanishings? "Thank you," she whispered, biting into the warm plantain absent-mindedly. "If you see him, please tell him Teo Johnson needs to speak with him. It's urgent." The boy nodded, eyes wide. "Yes, Auntie." As Teo walked away from the dock, her mind was buzzing like a million Christmas lights. She recalled the talk of green lightning the other passengers had mentioned the previous evening. It seemed more and more likely that something very strange, and possibly dangerous, was lurking out there on the lagoon at night. She looked around. The city around her still shimmered with holiday decorations, music floating from shops, and the hum of distant traffic. People laughed in the streets, children played games, and couples strolled under blinking lights. But behind all that happiness, Teo sensed a growing shadow. The puzzle pieces were only starting to form, and she had no idea how they would fit together in the end. Just as she was about to find a taxi, her phone buzzed again. This time it was Inspector Mike texting. "No sign of Mary or the dancers. Keep me posted. Stay safe." Teo took one last look at the lagoon. Something was calling to her from the water, like a silent whisper in the night. She couldn't ignore it. One by one, the pieces of this mystery were piling up. Mary's missing boat, talk of green lights, John Ocon's warning, the hush-hush attitude of Chief Adewale, and an entire city eager for a grand Christmas show. "Don't worry, Inspector," Teo muttered softly as she tapped out a reply. "I won't quit until I find Mary and the truth." The evening sky now wore a deep blue cloak, and somewhere above, the moon was beginning to rise, casting silver streaks across the water. Teo felt an unexplainable shiver rush through her as she stood alone by the dock. She couldn't help wondering if something or someone was watching from the darkness of the lagoon, waiting for the next boat to drift by. The next morning, Teo Johnson woke up feeling a mix of excitement and dread. Her head pounded with questions. What happened to Mary Okeke and her troop? Why did John Ocon talk about strange lights? And why did Chief Sunday Adewale seem so tense? Teo sipped on a cup of warm tea, trying to calm her nerves. Outside her window, the neighborhood was full of familiar morning sounds. The honking of cars, the chatter of roadside sellers, and the hum of generators in the distance. Normally, these noises comforted Teo, reminded her she wasn't alone. But today they felt more like a soundtrack to her worry. She pulled out her notepad and flipped through the scribbled notes. Mary Okeke, missing, last seen on a boat. 2 cargo boats. Vanished earlier this week. Strange green lights. Rumored by local fishermen. John Ocon. Last phone call sounded frightened. Before heading out, Teo received a message from her editor, Mr. Balogun. "Any scoop on Mary's disappearance? People are begging for details. Hurry." Teo rolled her eyes. He's always so pushy, she thought. But she also knew the city was buzzing with gossip, and the paper needed real answers, not just rumors. That afternoon, Teo decided to visit the families of the missing dancers. Maybe someone at their homes had heard from them. She started with Mary's younger brother, Tim Okeke, who lived in a small apartment near Bariga. She arrived at the building to find Tim looking worried and tired, pacing back and forth in front of his door. "Teo." "Oh, I'm so glad you're here," Tim said, rushing forward. He was around 18, tall and skinny, with the same bright eyes Mary had. "I can't find my sister anywhere. The last time I spoke to her was yesterday morning, and she sounded happy. Now her phone is off." Teo put a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Tim, do you know if Mary was worried about anything? Did she mention seeing or hearing something strange before she disappeared?" Tim thought for a moment. She was mostly excited about the big festival. But a few days ago, she said some of the dancers felt uneasy rehearsing on the water at night. They said they saw flickering lights and shadows in the distance. Teo nodded, scribbling notes. Did Mary mention who organized those late rehearsals on the lagoon? Tim frowned. She just said the festival organizers insisted the troupe practice on a special floating stage. That's all I know. Teo thanked him and promised to let him know if she learned anything. As she left, her heart felt heavier. Late-night practices on the lagoon. Strange lights. The puzzle grew more puzzling by the minute. Later, Teo took a bus to meet Inspector Mike Adewale at the police station once again. Sitting in his cramped office, she explained what Tim had told her. Inspector Mike listened carefully. Teo, I've got men searching the shoreline, but so far we have no sign of Mary or her dancers. The only new information I received is that one of the missing cargo boats was found drifting near an old warehouse off the coast. Completely empty. Teo's eyes lit up. An old warehouse. Where exactly? Somewhere near the Apapa docks, Inspector Mike replied, crossing his arms. It's a maze of storage buildings and shipping containers there. The owners claim they didn't see anything unusual. Teo sensed this was important. Could I look around? Maybe ask a few questions? Inspector Mike hesitated, then sighed. Fine, but don't go alone. It's not the safest place. I'll send an officer named Wale with you. Teo smiled appreciatively. Thank you, Inspector. I'll be careful. Within the hour, Teo found herself riding in a rickety police van with Officer Wale, a friendly man with a round face and a quick sense of humor. As they bumped along the road toward the Apapa docks, he told Teo a silly joke about two goats arguing in traffic. She laughed, even though her mind was still wrapped around the missing dancers. Soon they reached a wide area lined with towering warehouses. The metal doors seemed weathered, and the scent of salt water and diesel filled the air. The place looked almost abandoned, except for a few workers in neon vests moving crates and containers. A large, faded sign read, Warehouse 14. Wale checked his notes and pointed. That's the one we found the boat near, drifting all by itself. Weird, right? Teo nodded, stepping out onto the gravel. The air felt thick here, like it held secrets. They walked past rows of containers, each labeled with numbers and codes. A forklift beeped somewhere in the distance, and seagulls circled overhead, squawking as if warning them to stay away. At the entrance to Warehouse 14, they found the large sliding door slightly open. Teo's heart beat faster. Should we go in? Wale shrugged. We have permission, so yes. But let's be careful. Inside, the warehouse was dim, with only a few lamps overhead. Dusty wooden crates stacked 4 or 5 high lined the walls. Smelled like old rope and fish. Teo walked slowly, trying not to trip on loose floorboards. She noticed one corner had a giant tarp over some boxes. Her curiosity piqued. Just as she moved toward the tarp, she heard a rustling sound. Wale froze, his hand resting on his baton. Who's there? He called out. Only an echo answered. Teo's heart thumped. She whispered, let's check over there, pointing to the corner. Together, they edged closer until Teo carefully lifted the corner of the tarp. Underneath were broken fishing nets, empty plastic jugs, and a tattered piece of what looked like a costume. It was bright pink and decorated with tiny sequins. Teo's eyes widened. This looks like a dance costume. I've seen Mary's troupe wear something like this for their shows. Wale frowned, picking up the fabric. You think it belongs to the missing dancers? Teo nodded, feeling cold fear curl inside her. Must. But why is it here? Before Wale could respond, a loud clang echoed from the far end of the warehouse, as if someone had knocked over a metal pipe. Teo and Wale exchanged quick looks. They rushed toward the sound, only to find another exit door swinging open, letting in a flash of sunlight. Whoever had been there was now gone. Officer Wale sprinted outside, scanning the area. Teo followed, her heart hammering. The yard behind the warehouse was empty, except for a few rusted barrels and an old fishing net draped over broken crates. No sign of a person anywhere. Must have run off, Wale muttered. He pulled out his phone and called in a report. Teo, meanwhile, stared at the ground. She noticed footprints in the muddy ground near the barrels. They led toward a chain-link fence, which was bent at the corner, big enough for someone to slip through. Whoever they were, they didn't want us snooping, Teo whispered, hugging the pink cloth to her chest. If Mary's costume is here, maybe the troupe was brought to this spot. But why? And by whom? That evening, Teo found herself back at home, too restless to eat dinner. She placed the pink costume scrap on her small kitchen table, as if staring at it might reveal its secrets. Her phone buzzed. It was a voice message from Chief Sunday Adewale. Teo, I heard you visited a warehouse today. Listen, I appreciate your dedication, but be careful. We don't want to spread panic. The festival must go on for the sake of the city's Christmas cheer. If you find anything important, do tell me. Teo replayed the message, hearing a strange edge in the chief's voice. Was it concern? Or something else? She was still unsure. She tried calling John Ocone one more time, hoping the fisherman might pick up and explain what he saw on the lagoon. But once again, all she got was an automated voice saying, "The number you're trying to reach is switched off." Frustrated, Teo left a short voicemail begging him to call back. After pacing around her living room, Teo sank into her sofa. She switched on the TV to distract herself. A talk show was on, featuring happy guests sharing funny stories about Christmas traditions in Lagos. Festive jingles played, and bright lights sparkled on set. Normally, Teo would smile at the cheerful sight, but all she could think about was Mary, the missing dancers, and that piece of pink costume under the warehouse tarp. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Inspector Mike. "We tested the cloth you found. It's likely from Mary's troupe. No sign of foul play yet, but we're keeping an eye on the area." Teo typed back, "Thanks, Inspector. Let me know if you find more. This is getting bigger than I expected." She put her phone down, listening to the sounds of nightlife outside. People were laughing, playing music, and enjoying the holiday build-up. In some corners of Lagos, fancy lights decorated the streets, and cheerful families rushed to buy last-minute gifts. Yet in other corners, like that old warehouse, secrets lurked in the shadows. Just then, Teo's neighbor, an older woman named Auntie Blessing, knocked on her door. Auntie Blessing was known for her funny stories and caring heart. Tonight, though, her face looked troubled. "My dear Teo," she said softly, "I heard from a cousin that more folks are whispering about missing boats. This is not just a rumor, oh. The police better do something." Teo invited Auntie Blessing inside. She offered her a seat and a glass of water. "Do you think there's a reason behind these vanishings?" Teo asked. The older woman pursed her lips, eyes darting to the pink cloth on the table. "In Lagos, it could be anything. Pirates, smugglers, or even, well, something supernatural." A shrug. "But I don't believe in ghosts. All I know is you should be careful. Don't go poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Teo tried to smile, though fear tightened her chest. "I'll be careful, Auntie. Thank you." After Auntie Blessing left, Teo sat with the lights off, holding her notepad under the glow of a small lamp. She thought about the festival, about Mary and her dancers, and about the possibility that someone was using the Christmas buzz as a cover for something illegal or dangerous. Secrets hidden in plain sight, she mused, tapping her pen on the page. "And I'm going to uncover them no matter what." She gazed at the pink cloth one more time, remembering Mary's bright smile on festival posters. "Hang in there, Mary," she whispered, as if her missing friend could hear her. "I'll do everything I can to find you." Outside, a lone carol singer began singing Silent Night on the street corner, the tune floating up through Teo's window. It was a sweet reminder that Christmas was near, a season of hope. Teo clung to that hope as she headed to bed, her thoughts drifting between the bright lights of holiday cheer and the dark mysteries unfolding on the lagoon. Soon enough, she'd have to face those secrets head-on, and the stakes would only get higher. The days in Lagos seemed to move faster as Christmas drew closer. Festive music, bright decorations, and the scent of roasting chestnuts filled the streets, Yet an uneasy chill lingered in the air. Teo Johnson felt this most strongly whenever she saw a billboard featuring Mary Okeke's smiling face, the star dancer who was still missing, along with her entire troupe. Despite the holiday cheer, Teo sensed the city was hiding something under its blinking lights. The puzzle pieces were there: a warehouse with an abandoned boat, scraps of a pink costume, fishermen speaking of green lights, but they still didn't form a complete picture. Teo feared what that final image might be. Late one afternoon, just as Teo was about to head out, her phone buzzed. It was John Ocone, the fisherman she'd been trying to reach for days. She nearly dropped her phone from excitement. "John, are you okay? Where have you been?" Teo's voice shook with relief. "Auntie Teo," he began, sounding breathless. "I'm sorry I disappeared. I saw something I can't explain on the lagoon. I got too scared and went to my village for a few days. But I just returned now." Teo's heart pounded. "What did you see, John?" He hesitated. "Lights, green and glowing. They moved across the water like they were alive. I heard voices, but not like normal voices. Almost like whispers in the wind. Then I saw a boat drifting quietly. I'm sure I saw people inside, but they made no sound at all." Teo scribbled furious notes. "We need to meet. Please, John, this is important. Mary Okeke and her dancers are missing." John paused. "I'll meet you near the old fishing dock in Butte Meta at 7 p.m. But come alone. I don't want trouble, Auntie." Teo gulped. "All right. I'll be there. Thank you." She hung up, grabbed her bag and rushed out the door. Finally, she thought, John might have the key to this mystery. When Teo arrived at the dock that evening, the skies were painted with purple and orange clouds, and a gentle breeze blew across the lagoon. Christmas lights twinkled on nearby streets, reflecting softly on the water. The place looked strangely beautiful, yet Teo couldn't shake her anxiety. She spotted John Ocone standing under a weak lamp. He was wearing a worn-out cap and holding a flashlight. He looked around nervously, as if afraid someone was watching. "Teo," he whispered, motioning for her to come closer. "We must talk fast. I think there are people around here who don't want us finding the truth." Teo's breath caught in her throat. "What truth?" John glanced over his shoulder. "I think some folks have been using the lagoon to hide illegal activities. Smuggling things in and out. That green light might be a signal, or maybe part of some underwater device." Teo's mind swirled. Smuggling. Could that connect to the missing dancers? She thought of the warehouse near Apapa, where she'd found the pink costume. John continued, voice trembling. "I heard rumors about a large boat docking quietly at night. Never shows up in the daytime. Some locals suspect it's carrying stolen goods. And I heard certain powerful men might be involved. Rich men." Teo thought of Chief Sunday Adewale. Was he truly worried about Mary? Or more concerned about keeping the festival problem-free? Before Teo could ask more, John's eyes widened. He clicked off his flashlight, stepping away from the lamp's glow. "Someone's coming," he hissed. Indeed, footsteps echoed on the wooden pier. Teo squinted into the darkness but saw no one. A moment later, a loud splash erupted from the water, and Teo jumped back in alarm. John tugged her arm. "Go, Teo. You must leave before they see us." "But," she began. "No time," he insisted. "We'll talk again soon." Reluctantly, Teo hurried away. She threw one last glance over her shoulder, but all she saw was rolling fog drifting over the lagoon, swallowing John's figure until he vanished completely. Early the next morning, Teo rushed to the police station. She needed to share John's revelations with Inspector Mike Adewale. She arrived to find the station bustling with holiday chaos. People were reporting lost wallets, noisy parties, and minor fights. Inspector Mike was in his small office, looking overwhelmed. "Teo," he said wearily, "you look tense. Come in, tell me what's on your mind." She perched on a wooden chair and told him everything. John's story about mysterious green lights, secret nighttime boats, and suspicious smugglers. "Inspector, I really think Mary's disappearance is linked to something criminal. Inspector Mike listened, taking notes. We've heard of possible smuggling on the lagoon, but no solid proof. He set down his pen and sighed. I'm worried, Teo. The festival is tomorrow night, and everyone is expecting Mary's performance. Chief Denis is under pressure. If we don't find Mary, the public might panic. Suddenly, an officer burst into the office. Sir, we just got a tip from an anonymous caller. They claim to have seen the missing dance troupe near a secluded part of the lagoon. They said the dancers looked trapped. Both Teo and Inspector Mike shot to their feet. When did this come in? Mike demanded. Just now, sir. The caller hung up before we could trace it. Teo's heart raced. This might be the break we need. Inspector Mike grabbed his car keys. Let's go. We'll check it out immediately. Within half an hour, Teo and Inspector Mike, plus a few officers, arrived at a narrow inlet off the main lagoon. Tall reeds grew along the bank, swaying in the gentle breeze. The place felt eerily quiet, as if the rest of Lagos had no idea this hidden spot existed. Armed with flashlights, they navigated a small wooden pier. Teo's stomach twisted. Every creak of the boards felt like a ghostly warning. Was Mary somewhere in this maze of reeds? As they moved deeper into the inlet, one of the officers shouted, "Over here!" Everyone hurried to find him shining a beam of light on a small, battered boat half submerged in shallow water. Teo recognized the faint festival logo painted on its side. That's the festival boat Mary's troupe used, Teo whispered, voice trembling. But where are they? Inspector Mike knelt by the boat. He ran a gloved hand over the edge, noticing fresh scratches and a torn piece of bright fabric hanging from a nail. It was the same sparkly material Teo found before, only this piece was green, and it looked like part of a costume or a stage prop. One of the officers rummaged around inside the boat's storage box. Empty, he reported, shaking his head. No personal items, no sign of the dancers. Teo's eyes burned with tears. She touched the fabric gently. They were here, she murmured. But they're gone now. Inspector Mike stood up, face grim. They must have been taken somewhere else. Suddenly, they heard a distant rumble, like a motor starting up, echoing through the channels of water. Teo spun around, shining her flashlight across the lagoon, but saw only darkness. Then, just for a split second, she spotted something. A faint flicker of green light far out on the water, then silence. They headed back to the police station to regroup. On the way, Teo's phone pinged with a message from Chief Sunday Denis. Teo, please come to my home. Urgent matter regarding Mary's troupe. Her pulse leapt. Inspector, can you drop me off at Chief Denis' place? He says it's urgent. Inspector Mike considered it, then nodded. All right, but let me know if anything strange happens. When Teo arrived at the chief's mansion, she noticed the house was decorated with even more Christmas lights than before. However, there was no warmth in the air tonight. The guards looked tense, and the staff seemed on edge. Chief Denis welcomed her in a large, ornate living room that smelled of pine-scented candles. Teo, child, he said, voice trembling. I just got a disturbing note slipped under my gate. It says Mary's troupe has been taken, and it warns me not to involve the police. Teo's eyes widened. May I see it? He handed her a folded piece of paper. The message, written in shaky letters, read, Stay quiet. We have your dancers. If you don't cooperate, the show will never go on. Teo's hand trembled. Chief Denis, who sent this? He shook his head, sinking into a plush chair. I don't know. But the note mentions the festival. It says if I don't follow instructions, Mary and her dancers will disappear forever. His eyes shone with tears. I can't let that happen. The festival is tomorrow night. The entire city is counting on me to bring Christmas cheer, and on Mary to perform. Teo swallowed hard, a wave of fear and anger washing over her. We have to find them before it's too late. Yes, Chief Denis agreed. I'll do anything to ensure they're safe. For a moment, Teo thought she saw guilt flicker across his face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She stared at the blinking Christmas tree lights in the corner, feeling the pressure mounting. A city full of joyful decorations and holiday music couldn't hide the darkness creeping in from the lagoon. Leaving the chief's mansion, Teo felt more determined than ever. The festival was just hours away, and whoever was behind this kidnapping had them all dancing like puppets on a string. Smugglers, pirates, or someone with an even more sinister motive. As Teo climbed into a taxi, she replayed John Ocon's words in her head. Some folks have been using the lagoon to hide illegal activities. That might explain the vanishings, but not completely. Why target Mary's troop in particular? Did they stumble on something they weren't supposed to see? The taxi sped through the bustling streets. Christmas lights glowed in shop windows, and families laughed together while carrying shopping bags. But Teo felt none of the holiday cheer. Instead, she stared at her phone, waiting for any news from Inspector Mike. Nothing. She leaned her head back, silently praying Mary and her dancers were still alive. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, she thought, scanning the bright city skyline. If we don't solve this now, the show could end in tragedy. With new determination, Teo glanced at the glowing red numbers on her phone. Past 9 p.m. She texted Inspector Mike. Chief received a ransom-like note. We must act fast. I'll keep investigating. Let me know of any updates. She pressed send, telling herself they were close to unraveling the truth. Yet, deep in her heart, she sensed something bigger, more twisted, was about to surface under the Christmas lights. And she wasn't sure who she could trust when it finally did. Christmas Eve dawned in Lagos, bright and hot, as if the sun itself was celebrating. The streets shimmered with festive decorations and excited shoppers hunting for last-minute gifts. Cheery carols rang out from makeshift stalls, and children laughed while munching on small bags of roasted groundnuts. Yet under all the holiday delight, a dark knot of fear gripped Teo Johnson's heart. She still hadn't found Mary Okeke or the missing dance troupe, and the festival was set to begin that very night. Teo spent the morning calling every contact she could think of. Old classmates, local fishermen, stage crew members, searching for clues. But no one had any solid leads. Whenever she recalled the crumpled ransom note Chief Sunday Adewale showed her, a cold shiver ran down her spine. Someone was threatening to keep Mary and her dancers hidden forever if the chief didn't meet their demands. Around noon, Inspector Mike Adewale called Teo to meet him at the police station. When she arrived, the place was its usual noisy self, filled with the buzz of anxious citizens. She found Inspector Mike standing by a whiteboard covered in scribbles, a worried line between his brows. We finally traced some suspicious phone calls to an old jetty near Badagry Creek, he told Teo, pointing to a spot on a rough map of Lagos waterways. We think that's where the kidnappers might be holding Mary and her dancers. But we can't just storm in without backup. If we scare them, they might move the dancers again. Teo felt relief mixing with dread. They had a location, but still so many risks. Let me help, she offered. I can try to talk to the chief. He might be able to distract them or something. Inspector Mike nodded. All right. But promise me you'll be careful, Teo. These people are dangerous. She promised, though inside her, excitement and fear clashed like cymbals. By late afternoon, the huge Christmas dance festival kicked off by the lagoon. Even though Mary's troupe was missing, Chief Adewale didn't want to cancel the show. Hundreds of guests arrived, wearing bright clothes and Santa hats. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and the stage glowed under twinkling lights. Families chatted happily, waiting for the famous performance they believed would happen any minute. Teo slipped through the crowd, scanning faces. She found Chief Adewale behind the stage, pacing and sweating. He'd replaced his fancy agbada with simpler clothes, yet he still clutched his phone as if it were a lifeline. Teo, he exclaimed. I haven't heard a word from the kidnappers all day. The festival is happening, but Mary's troupe is still gone. The mayor and important guests are expecting a grand show at 8 p.m. What can we do? Teo squared her shoulders. Chief, Inspector Mike thinks he's found where Mary and the dancers are being held. In Badegree Creek. You have to keep these criminals busy. Maybe they're expecting you to pay them off or follow their orders, right? Chief Adewale blinked, then nodded slowly. Yes, they told me in their note to wait for instructions. If they call, I'll say I'm ready to do whatever they want. But I won't mention the police. That should buy time. Exactly. While you stall, Inspector Mike will move in, Teo said. Her heart fluttered with both hope and fear. I'll go join them. Chief Adewale looked alarmed. But it's dangerous. Teo grimaced. I can't sit here doing nothing. Mary's my friend. She hurried off before the chief could protest further. That evening, Teo rode in a small speedboat with Inspector Mike, Officer Wale, and a few others. They navigated the winding waterways leading to Badegree Creek. The sky turned a pale orange, then pink, as the sun set over the water. Christmas lights from far-off buildings glinted in the distance, but here, in the quieter corners of the lagoon, shadows grew long and ominous. The boat engine was loud, and Teo's heart pounded with every hum of the motor. They switched off their main light to stay hidden, navigating by moonlight and a small flashlight. The air smelled of wet reeds and salt. Overhead, stars began twinkling as if watching the drama below. Suddenly, the silhouette of an old jetty appeared on the horizon. Inspector Mike gestured for the driver to slow down. We'll approach on foot from here, he whispered. They docked quietly and stepped onto a creaking wooden platform. All around them, tall grass rustled in the breeze. Teo shivered, remembering John Ocon's stories about strange lights. But tonight, everything looked silent and still. Then, just as they crept around a corner, they spotted a dim glow from a small building, likely a rundown storage shed. Teo's pulse raced. Could Mary be inside? The group advanced in silence. 2 police officers flanked the door, while Inspector Mike prepared to rush in. Teo stayed close behind, holding her breath. Police! Inspector Mike shouted, kicking the door open. The officers' flashlights cut through the darkness. Inside, they found a startled man holding a phone, mouth hanging open in shock. Scattered around were boxes labeled with foreign brand names, possible smuggled goods, and near the back, a large barred door. Teo sprinted to the barred door, shining her flashlight through its rusty slats. Her heart nearly exploded with relief when she saw Mary Okeke and her dancers huddled together, looking exhausted but very much alive. As soon as Mary spotted Teo, tears welled in her eyes. Teo, Mary cried out. You found us. They wouldn't let us go. They said we'd seen too much. Hang on, Mary, Teo exclaimed. Officer Wale hurried over with a crowbar, forcing the lock until it finally snapped. The dancers spilled out of the cell, hugging and thanking the officers. Mary clutched Teo's hands, sobbing quietly. We were so scared, she said. They made us get on a boat every night to move stolen goods. We didn't know how to escape. Inspector Mike and the other officers surrounded the kidnapped man, apparently one of the smuggler's henchmen. Who are you working for? Mike demanded. The man refused to speak, eyes darting with fear. But Teo felt certain a bigger boss was behind this. As the group escorted Mary and the dancers outside, the man's phone started ringing. Inspector Mike answered on speaker, disguising his voice. An angry voice hissed over the line. Why aren't you moving the shipment yet? The chief's paying big to keep quiet. Everyone went silent, listening closely. Teo's mind raced. Chief's paying to keep quiet. Which chief? The voice spat more instructions, revealing that the smugglers had planned to use the festival crowd as a perfect distraction to move illegal cargo unseen. Mary's dancers had discovered the scheme by accident during their night rehearsals, and so they were kidnapped. Teo's eyes widened. So it wasn't about ransom for the dancers. It was about protecting their smuggling operation. The call ended abruptly when the person on the other end realized something was wrong. Inspector Mike lowered the phone. We have enough evidence to arrest whoever's behind this, he said, looking grim. But we need to confirm their identity. A moment later, John Ocone rushed into view, wearing a worried expression. "I followed you all to help," he explained. "I recognized that voice on the phone. It sounded like a man I've seen meeting secretly at the old Apapa warehouse, someone who's been dealing with stolen cargo." He wore fancy clothes and kept bragging about how he had friends in high places. Teo glanced at Mary and the dancers. They looked at each other knowingly, each remembering a certain detail about a tall, elegant man with an expensive watch who once visited their late-night rehearsal. Not Chief Sunday Denis, but Chief Denis's personal assistant, Mr. Collins, the quiet but ever-present man who handled the chief's schedules and finances. "That must be it," Teo whispered. "He's been using Chief Denis's name to hide his own smuggling." The festival was just the perfect cover. With Mary and her troop rescued, Inspector Mike rushed them back to safety. Teo, trembling from adrenaline, insisted on calling Chief Denis right away to warn him about Mr. Collins. But before she dialed, her phone buzzed. An incoming call from the chief himself. "Teo," he said, relief clear in his voice. "I just got word that the dancers have been found. Thank God. But I just learned something terrible." Mr. Collins ran off as soon as he heard the police were close. "I had no idea he was secretly involved in smuggling." "It's not your fault, Chief," Teo replied softly. "He took advantage of your festival to hide his crimes. The important thing is Mary is safe." Chief Denis's voice broke with emotion. "They're back, and that's the greatest Christmas gift I could ask for. The final show starts in 2 hours. Do you think Mary can still dance?" Teo turned to Mary, who overheard the question. Despite her bruises and exhaustion, Mary smiled bravely. "Yes," she said in a shaky voice. "For the people of Lagos, I'll dance." And so, 2 hours later, Mary and her troop stood on the glowing stage by the lagoon, wearing costumes that sparkled under the lights. The crowd roared with joy to see them safe. Teo watched from the side, tears of happiness shining in her eyes as Mary began the performance. The dancers moved gracefully, their arms and legs flowing like water, each step echoing hope and resilience. Music pulsed through the night, loud and triumphant. As fireworks exploded overhead in brilliant colors, Teo felt a wave of relief wash over her. The danger, the green lights, the eerie disappearances, all of it now made sense. A smuggling ring using the lagoon, abducting innocent witnesses. Mr. Collins might still be on the run, but his plan was ruined. Mary and her dancers were free, and Christmas Eve was saved from turning into a tragedy. After the show, Teo and Mary hugged tightly. "You're a hero," Mary told Teo, eyes shining with gratitude. "Without you, we'd still be trapped." Teo blushed, shaking her head. "You're the brave one, Mary. Dancing for everyone tonight, even after all you went through, shows real courage." Meanwhile, Inspector Mike congratulated Chief Denis. "We'll track down Collins soon," he promised. "But for now, let's enjoy the fact that no harm came to your dancers." Chief Denis smiled, wiping away a tear. "Thank you, Inspector. And thank you, Teo. This festival will go on, shining even brighter because we've overcome darkness." The fireworks continued, each burst lighting the lagoon in rainbow hues. Families cheered, couples hugged, children laughed, and the music carried on. In that magical moment, it felt like Lagos itself was celebrating not just Christmas, but the triumph of hope over fear. Teo lifted her gaze to the night sky, watching the sparks paint the heavens. She thought of the city, the blend of trenches and bright modern streets, the big hearts of everyday people, and the wonders they could achieve by standing together. The mystery was solved, Mary was safe, and Christmas had never felt so precious. With a final boom of glittering fireworks, Teo whispered a silent prayer of thanks, knowing that Lagos would forever remain a place of both hidden dangers and boundless joy, where even under the darkest waters, the light of Christmas could still shine.